The summer the pigeons began arriving in organized squadrons, no one in Barrisport thought much of it. Pigeons were everywhere already, pecking at hot dog buns near the pier, strutting under cafe tables, so a few hundred more riding the updrafts between the glass towers hardly drew notice. But Graff and the rest of the tunnel artists took immediate interest because the birds never came alone. Each was trussed with a filament-thin ribbon, and dangling from every ribbon was a canister the size of a lipstick tube. The canisters contained paper curls the color of smoke, feather-light and saturated with a smell like wet pennies. The curls unfurled into jagged ideograms, symbols no linguist could find in any alphabet. Yet every tagger who saw them understood them without translation, the way a guitarist knows a chord by ear. The meaning appeared in the mind fully formed: prophecy. Graff first spotted one of the scrolls while spraying his signature iron blue asteroid over a derelict loading bay. He was 20, skinny, and practiced at being ignored by passers-by. When the ribboned bird landed on the rusted railing beside him, he expected the usual coo and dash for crumbs. Instead, it pecked at the knot around its ankle until the canister dropped at Graff's feet. The scroll inside showed an image that was not an image. To anyone else, it would look like intersecting lightning bolts, but to Graff it said, "When the river mirrors the sky, seek high ground." A chill split his spine. His grandfather had told him similar warnings in bedtime stories about the Great Flood of '38. He pocketed the scrap and kept working, yet his hand shook so badly that the nebula he'd meant to paint dripped into an imprecise smear. That night he took the subway to Beacon Yards, the subterranean meeting place where Barrisport's graffiti crews gathered. Beacon used to be a maintenance station. Now, its walls were a chronicle of rivalries and collaborations, of neon phoenixes and moss-green labyrinths, whole universes rendered in aerosol. It was also where the pigeons preferred to drop their coded gifts. They roosted on pipes overhead, then fluttered down in intervals like clockwork couriers, scattering scrolls among the half-finished murals. Some messages warned of stock crashes. Others whispered of births, deaths, or storms. Every crew had a name: Haze Queens, Nocturnals, Writ Large, and Graff's own group, the Omens. Friendly competition ruled the paint-soaked hall, but when it came to the prophecies, the taggers had a pact: share everything, confirm later, and never, ever tell outsiders. The Omens gathered around Graff as he flattened the smoky paper on an overturned crate. Aura, who painted calligraphy so elegant people mistook it for vector art, read the symbol as he had: "When the river mirrors the sky, seek high ground." She pulled up the weather app on her phone. Nothing but sunshine predicted. "Maybe it's a metaphor," she said. "Or maybe the app's wrong," said Ghost, a bulky guy who wore a respirator even when not painting. He handled the group's logistics: bolt cutters, batteries, lookout rotations, and he had learned to trust the pigeons more than any forecast. "Remember March?" He referred to a previous scroll that had warned simply, "Windows." 3 days later, an earthquake shattered 100 downtown facades. No seismologist had expected it. The taggers had vacated the district the evening before, guiding friends and family out under invented excuses. Across Beacon Yards, a shout erupted. Benji, one of the Haze Queens, had found a scroll predicting 3 towers fall. That produced a grim silence. There were precisely 3 high-rise buildings under construction near the waterfront. Aura glanced at her brother, who worked on the site, then tucked her anxiety behind a scrunchie and started sketching on the wall, turning worry into fluorescent arabesques. The next morning, the mayor held a press conference. Barrisport, he declared, would no longer tolerate visual pollution. Effective immediately, a task force of sanitation crews, volunteer groups, and drone-operated washers would begin cleaning every exterior wall, bridge trestle, and viaduct. "We are reclaiming our civic pride," he said, standing before a backdrop of smiling children. News anchors praised the initiative. The first hoses activated at dawn, scouring the layered art of 10 years in minutes. Paint sluiced down storm drains like rainbow melt. Graff watched coverage on an old TV at his grandmother's apartment. The camera lingered on the mayor as he congratulated a volunteer spraying the power washer. Graff hardly noticed them. He was staring at the wall behind, half erased partly by accident. There, dripping but still visible, was a mural by the Nocturnals, a wave shaped like an angel's wing, crowned by stylized lightning. Beside it, another tagger had, months earlier, stenciled an astrolabe whose pointer aimed straight at the wing's crest. The combination formed a bigger glyph that now shouted a meaning he'd never recognized. The water rises at dawn. He sprinted out, heart hammering. Beacon Yards was a war zone of paint and feathers. Pigeons swarmed, dropping scrolls with frantic urgency. One after another hit the concrete. Leave the low line, bridges break, sky weeps salt. Taggers scrambled to pick them up, while city-issued drones hovered outside the tunnel mouth, blasting any visible art with solvent foam. The taggers' secret archive, their living record of prophecies and warnings, was being shredded into iridescent puddles. Ghost pulled Graff aside. "If they erase the walls, we lose the code. We'll be deaf." Graff nodded. Without the existing graffiti as context, the symbolic language on the scrolls became ambiguous. Every pigeon message relied on alignment, placement, color echo, proximity to older tags. It was half tattoo, half palimpsest. Strip the city bare, and the prophecies would revert to random scratches. Worse, the walls themselves sometimes completed the warnings. Legends told that the pigeons didn't simply forecast disasters. They triggered artists to paint solutions. Remove the paintings, and disaster followed unopposed. Aura arrived, cheeks streaked with paint and tears. "My brother," she panted. "He's on Tower 2. They're working through the weekend. No days off." Graff understood what she wanted. He also understood what she feared to ask. The crews would never believe a handful of taggers ranting about pigeon scrolls. Graff's own dad used to call his hobby spray vandalism, until a scroll convinced him to skip a ferry ride that later sank. Even then he kept quiet, terrified of being labeled insane. "It's the walls," Graff said. "We can't save everyone unless we save the art." Ghost unzipped a duffel stuffed with aerosol cans. "Then we paint faster than they wash." That afternoon, the omens split up. Graff and Aura headed to the riverfront with 40 cans, 3 pounds of stencils, and a sack of day-old baguette to bribe pigeons. Ghost went to hack the drone network, while 2 younger members canvassed basement clubs for volunteers. By dusk, 50 taggers, Haze Queens, Nocturnals, writ large, even a few rival crews from neighboring cities, assembled beneath the expressway that faced the water. Traffic thundered above, oblivious. Graff climbed a concrete pillar and addressed them. His voice quaked, but carried. "We aren't fighting the mayor," he began. "We're fighting blind fate. Every wall they erase makes the future darker. We've seen the messages: flood, collapse, skyfall. We don't know when, maybe tonight, maybe next week, but we know what stops it. The city needs these murals like a body needs antibodies. So we repaint. We repaint everything." A murmur of assent rippled through the gathering. Spray nozzles clicked like an army cocking rifles. Graff's plan was half strategy, half compulsion. If the pigeons used existing pieces as anchors, then recreating them, even roughly, might restore the code. But he also dreamed of something bigger, a single piece sprawling over enough surface to hold every recurring motif: wave, wing, tower, mirror, so the next scroll could align anywhere and still be intelligible. He dubbed it the Master Sigil. While the others retouched lost murals, Graff, Aura, and Benji sketched the master on the retaining wall by Pier 9, a slab nearly 200 meters long, normally hidden behind shipping containers. Graff outlined a river in cobalt. Aura wove constellations above it in pearlescent white, each star a stylized pigeon. Benji stenciled 3 towers in negative space, using the raw gray of concrete for their silhouettes, so they would remain even if the paint eroded. Under black light, the towers glowed faintly, thanks to a layer of UV reactive coating pilfered from a theater supply store. Midnight approached. The sanitation crews slept. The drones lay dormant after Ghost looped their GPS feeds. Pigeons circled overhead like anxious satellites. Then a bell rang from upriver. 1 toll, 2, 3. A foghorn wailing out of rhythm. Graff looked up to see lightning spiderweb over the horizon, though the sky remained cloudless. A thrumming vibration passed through the ground that felt like the subway but wasn't. On the surface of the Barris River, the city lights reflected with uncanny fidelity, undisturbed by ripples. The river, in that moment, mirrored the sky. "It's early!" Graff shouted. "The walls aren't ready!" Water surged. The tide line climbed docks, lifting moored boats until their ropes snapped. Containers stacked along the wharf toppled like dominoes. Taggers scattered as the first wave smashed against the retaining wall, spraying icy sheets that soaked paint still wet. Aura screamed for her brother, her phone buzzing with unanswered calls. Graff grabbed her hand and pulled her behind a forklift. "Look," he said, pointing at the master sigil. In the wash of street lamps and lightning, the towers Benji had left unpainted burned silver. The river motif pulsed cobalt. Aura's constellations shimmered so brightly the shapes appeared to peel off the wall. The pigeons dove. Hundreds crashed into the mural, their wings slapping the paint as if stirring it. The colors roiled, rearranged. Cobalt currents rose, birthing a translucent barrier that bulged outward. Water struck it and rebounded, redirected along the wall before pouring back into the river instead of over the street. The pigeons continued their feverish fluttering, trading positions like living pixels. Where their feathers touched, glyphs formed. Not the pigeons' normal cryptic script, but letters everyone could read, 15 meters high, glowing with borrowed lightning. "Evacuate upper floors now." Graff's breath caught. The message, legible to any onlooker, bypassed the secrecy of the tagger code. Sirens from the experimental flood alert system, a project years behind schedule, finally howled as if ashamed. People in waterfront condos poured onto balconies, pointing phones at the luminous words. Some laughed, thinking it a projection stunt. Then a freight crane on the far pier groaned, tilted, and snapped, its boom plunging into the river with a geyser's roar. The watchers fled inside. Graff saw Aura staring past him, eyes wide. He turned. A crane of a different sort, Tower 2's skeletal frame, loomed downriver, wobbling. Sparks dropped like fireflies where welders scrambled away. The base flooded, concrete footings dissolving. "My brother," she whispered. Graff had a sudden, desperate idea. The mural can move water. Maybe it can move the tower. He had no proof, no plan, only faith that the language of images could bend reality. He sprinted to the far end of the wall, where Benji's silhouettes ended, and sprayed a rapid sketch. The 3 towers again, but this time he drew arrows lifting one upright, stabilizing it. Aura caught on, adding thick vines coiling around the tower's base like braces. Pigeons dive-bombed the fresh paint, smearing it into motion. Across the river, Tower 2's wobble ceased. The metal frame straightened, as if an invisible hand held it steady. Welders below gaped, then scrambled into elevators to evacuate. Graff felt euphoria, brief, electric, before noticing the waterline still rising. The barrier of cobalt held, yet the river climbed, possessed by some deeper anger. Ghost ran toward them, drenched. "North Levee gave," he yelled. "Hold down town's next." Graff scanned the remaining blank concrete, mind racing. They needed a conduit to draw water away entirely, not merely block it. A memory flickered. The old subway extension, abandoned tunnels that sloped toward the ocean outlet. If they could symbolically punch a channel from river to tunnel, maybe the real world would follow the art's lead. He sprayed a sweeping tunnel mouth, exaggerating perspective to suggest depth, flanked by arrows curving from river into darkness. Aura and Benji added motion lines. Ghost laid down ripples leading out to sea. Pigeons merged with the strokes, and the mural vibrated like heat on asphalt. A thunderous crack rattled the night. Behind the retaining wall, asphalt split along the very path the mural depicted. Water gushed through the new fissure, hissing down into the forgotten subway artery. What had been a structural weakness became a sluice, dragging debris and silt away from residential blocks. Graff nearly collapsed, half from exhaustion, half from awe. The river dropped centimeter by centimeter. Moonlight reappeared between torn clouds. By dawn, emergency management declared the flood contained. Casualties were miraculously low. A broken leg, a few mild hypothermias, no deaths. The towers stood. News choppers filmed the retaining wall, marveling at how an unauthorized artwork had seemingly predicted and maybe prevented a catastrophe. Experts called the correlation remarkable but surely coincidental. The mayor ordered an immediate halt to all power washing until independent studies could determine whether graffiti had, in some paradoxical way, saved the city. Graff, Aura, Ghost, and the rest reconvened at Beacon Yards, now half submerged but drying quickly. The pigeons landed among them, calm. No scrolls dropped. They didn't need to. The message had already blazed across the sky. "I think we just graduated," Ghost said, peeling off his respirator. "From vandals to infrastructure." Benji laughed, then sobered. "They'll come for the walls again, maybe weeks from now, maybe months. They'll say we got lucky, that we faked everything." Aura stroked a pigeon perched on her shoulder. "Then we'll paint again, and the birds will bring more words, and the walls will listen." Graff faced the tunnel's battered entrance. Above it, a single new glyph shimmered where a pigeon had brushed its wing, two circles overlapping, one of sky, one of water, with a spray can bridging them. To all taggers, it meant the same thing. Prepare. He smiled. "Yeah," he said, lifting a fresh can and shaking it until the rattle echoed like a drum beat. "We'll be ready."